At this time, I'll call the Budget and Purchasing Committee meeting to order and ask Pat to call the roll, please.
Kirby. Lewis. Mitchell. Moon. Samples. You have a quorum.
Hey, Pat, now I'll ask that you give the emergency announcement, please.
Before we get started, let me read the emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm will sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you have reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles.
I'll now ask if there's any public input on items on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to D, purchasing, review sole source purchases. Is that going to be Teresa? Okay. The sole source purchases, emergency purchases, and all of that's information only? Okay. All right, y'all have copies of the minutes. The minutes need approval. Do I have a motion? Second. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll ask for a voice vote. Pat? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Finance increases and transfers. Next we have the finance portion. F1A, County Clerk Fund 101, $5,000 to data processing equipment. Roy?
We've been experiencing a huge increase in our workload because of rental car companies. We're just doing a lot of registrations for the rental car companies. And in order to handle this increase, we're going to need to get 3 more scanners, plus the signature pads. Total cost with the software and everything else is going to be $5,000. That money would come from the county clerk computer fund, and so I would request that we make the transfer to do that.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Randy?
It's actually going, technically it's an increase because the money's sitting in reserve right now and we'll need to move it to the operating side of the budget.
Restricted fund balance?
Yes.
But it's his data.
It is designated for the use of the county clerk.
Have any more discussion? Pat, I'll ask for a vote.
Kirby. Lewis. Yes. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon. Yes. Samples. Yes. Motion passed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
F1B, Election Fund 101, $1,540 for data processing equipment. Libby's, Randy, you want to?
This is another grant that the state has made our election office aware of that they're making available to us, and to recognize that grant, we're recommending that an increase of $1,540 be made to the Election Commission budget so that they can accept it.
Do I have a motion? And a second? Discussion? Any questions?
So this is matching grant?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Lewis. Yes. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon. Yes. Samples.
Yes.
Motion passed.
F1C, Probation Fund 101, $240,070 for monitoring and probation. Randy, you want to segue into this?
Yes, let me give you a little background here. The next two items, my comments are attributed to both of them. As you're aware, the commission has a committee of partnership, Corrections Partnership Committee, that is reviewing what our next steps need to be to address our jail overcrowding. Both of these items that are coming up, items C and D, relate to the work of that committee. The first item is a recommendation that we're making to increase the probation budget that would enable us to pursue methods and tools to prevent people from having to be housed in our jail. The second item is an appropriation from fund balance that we're asking you to send on to the full commission so that we can engage the services of the consultant to do the needs assessment on our current booking and jail circumstances. So that's kind of the backdrop. Both of these kind of work hand in hand to keep what we're trying to do as a county to address our jail overcrowding.
At this time, I'd like to ask for Joni to come up and kind of give a presentation on this, if that's okay with the committee. Okay.
Good evening. I was asked several months back how my department, probation, could help alleviate some of the jail overcrowding issues. And one thing that came up was the electronic monitoring program. I have researched that, and there was an RFP through purchasing that was made to see what companies were out there and what kind of programs they could offer. Upon all my research on that, in order for me to implement a electronic monitoring program, I would need to increase the budget. There were 7 responses to our RFP, and we interviewed 4, and we have not made a decision yet because it's based on I have to have a budget increase in order to implement the program. We haven't decided on that program yet, and we don't preclude any there's some companies that would like to outsource completely through probation, and I'm not comfortable with that yet. But there are some viable options that we can explore. In order to do that, I would like to increase the budget by a total of $240,070. And I'll kind of give a breakdown on what that is and kind of give a background on why I need that amount. In order to implement this program, I would need at least 2 new probation officers. Currently, our probation officers are completely understaffed. We see a total, as of an hour ago, 1,908 probationers. We see these either on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So our office is very busy as it is. In order for us to implement this electronic monitoring program, we would have to have 2 people. So I would ask for $108,090, and that would cover the approximate salary and benefits of 2 additional probation officers. In order to do that as well, I would need to remodel the office a little bit, and that would do a couple of different things. First and foremost, it would allow me to create 2 offices for the 2 new probation officers. It would also allow me to expand our classroom, which probation office, as a service to the community here, and to help the probationers that are sentenced to do driving schools, DUI schools, batterers intervention programs, various different classes that they may have been ordered from the court. We house those at our office. It would enable me to add at least another 20 to 30 people in our classes if we expanded our office. And so I think I can do that in around $10,000. We would additionally get revenue for that. But our classes, our driving schools are $75 per person, and our DUI schools are $150 per person, and we get $75 of that. So if I could add an additional amount of that, it would definitely increase could be up to $50,000 to $60,000 increase on being able to allow for the additional participants in the classrooms. Right now, we are currently full in our DUI schools until March of next year. So that has led a lot of our clients to Knox County and Sevier County that also offer those programs. So I would like to keep them here for us to make the revenue rather than the other counties. Also, $8,000 of that would be for office supplies and furnitures for our 2 new probation officers. I would also have to ask for $1,000 for general office supplies. That would be to cover the additional funds of paper, ink, and other products that we might need. We'd also add for, we have a probation tracking system that's been very helpful to our office, and there's a $20 per person over 10 employees. So I would ask for $480 just to make sure that we had enough to cover that per year. We would also, an electronic monitoring program is a 24/7, 365 days a year program that my probation officers would be, have to respond within minutes of an alert. And in order for them to do so, they would need to be able to have communication. So I would ask that we need to provide them with a cell phone that has internet capabilities, as well as maybe 1 or 2 iPads for the office. So that would be the $8,000 that I would be asking. Also, would like to increase the tuition travel to $1,500 because every one of my staff is certified as a defensive driving school instructor. So I'd also like to get the additional people trained as well. And then an additional $3,000 for driving school manuals because they cost us a certain amount of money, but we still profit around $71 per class. With an electronic monitoring program, which is the main focus of today, is how can it help? An average cost to house an inmate would be about $40. This is a healthy inmate, one that doesn't require much medical attention. It would be around $40 per day. So I figured it's just an approximate thing that if you took 40 inmates away, that could offset approximately $584,000. But it could also, in turn, we could see an approximate revenue to the probation office of $99,280. An electronic monitoring program would be completely offender funded. The offender would be charged $10 per day per participant, which roughly is $300 or $310 a month. Out of that, we would make a certain amount off of that, $10. Some of the money would go to the electronic monitoring service, and then we would get the remaining approximately $6.80 per participant, per day. We would also assess them a fee of $25 to get them implemented into the program, and so if we had 40, we could get at least an additional $1,000 out of that. Right now, I would have to have at least 2 probation officers because I would not want to put more than 40 people on the program per probation officer. I would need about 20 per probation officer to start out with. So there's definitely a cost savings that would be for the jail, as well as benefit us as the county as the revenue from this program. It's been very successful in various different counties. I've also talked to Knox County and other places around. It's been very successful there. Excuse me. But yes, I would definitely have to have more probation officers because right now they're holding over 350 plus each probation officer. And I handle myself 117 currently. So that is why I'm asking for the budget increase at this time.
I guess we need to get a motion and a second. We can get on the floor for discussion. Have a motion? Second? Open for discussion now.
I was hearing a lot of expenses and charges that are not showing up that I can find on our computers here. Is there a reason why we don't have that delineation of charges?
You should have. It's
Well, I'm only seeing, down to page 2. I've been to page 2 or 3 times, and I can't remember exactly what they were right now, but there were several.
keep going.
Past page 2?
Yes, past page 3. And I apologize. Our forms require
just
the
said there were
first
2
3 pages.
Yeah.
Our forms require the first 3 pages. It's just the limitation and the space on there. Yeah.
Okay.
Joni's prepared an analysis called BCP Budget Proposal, October 2013.
Yeah, and that's the breakdown.
Yeah, I was just looking at 2 pages because it said.
And I
1 or
apologize
2.
for that, but the reason this is not paying for itself initially is we have to get the probation officers hired, trained, and on staff before we start the probation program itself. That's a liability and a risk that I don't think any of us should be comfortable accepting until those folks have been hired and trained. So correct me if I'm wrong, Joni. If this gets approved, you start that process immediately, which is going to be roughly around November 1st.
Yes.
And then you wouldn't actually start taking probationers until January?
Yes, that's the ideal situation in order to get my people hired and trained effectively in regular world of probation, and instead of throwing them into it immediately, and then start the program in January. And also, my office is going to have to be renovated as well, so that gives me time to do that.
Before I commit to this, could we talk to, I see 3 judges back here. Who wants to come up? Judge Brewer, how do you guys feel about the jury?
Well, you know, this is something we've never done before. Under the appropriate circumstances, I know I would, and I believe my colleagues would be willing to consider placing folks on electronic monitoring just to, again, just to see how it works. Again, I don't have any, we've never done it before, so there's no track record here in Blount County of what's going to happen, but I think it's something that, you know, under all the circumstances, that's something that the county needs to look at. Again, under the appropriate circumstances, we'd put people on the program.
Do they use it anywhere around us locally?
Knox County does. They did a pilot program with one of the vendors that's just now ended, but now I think they're getting ready to sign a contract with that same vendor to they got to do like a year-to-year type contract, as I understand it. Of course, they like most other counties got overcrowding problems also.
Judge, do they do the same thing in Knox County that we're looking to do here as far as
Well,
farming out part of the program or keeping it all in-house as opposed to third party and some of that out, and then we monitor the rest?
as I understand, there's, like I said, Joni, you know, I've looked at the proposals, and I know she's interviewed, and I've sat on at least one interview with one of the vendors, and they've got various different bells and whistles to their program, and it's just a matter of how much they charge you to do whatever you want them to do, and then over and above that's an amount that she proposes to charge, which would eventually should show a revenue to the county, I think. I mean, it just depends again. We'd be willing to try it. So you know, I was before this body back in 2006 when we'd contract with a private probation company when they basically said we're not going to be in business anymore, and suggested to the county that doing the county probation through the executive's office would be a good thing for the county for several reasons, because we keep it in-house. We'd know who was going to be running the show and that kind of thing, and suggested that it would be if you want to look at it in dollars and cents, that it would be something the county would make revenue. In fact, the Joni's department's in the black, has been, a couple $100,000, $200,000 or $300,000, Randy, something like that, over the.
It's a negative revenue for the county.
So, I'm thinking you were going to ask me things I can't answer because I just don't know yet, but,
Well, it's
I think
a new experience for all of us, but I understand from counties who have tried it, they've been pretty pleased with it. It's certainly an option for us to look at as well.
You know, and again, to emphasize what she said, you know, they've got 350 to 375 people on that each probation officer supervising. That's just an amazing amount that they're able to get what's done. And there's just no way this is more intensive. There's no way that they could perform that function without the additional folks. There's absolutely no way. It'd be a waste of time to try.
How many probation officers do we have currently? What's the head count?
5
5.
plus Johnny.
Johnny, talk just a little bit about kind of the initial expense versus the payback over time with this program.
Sure. Like I said, it's going to depend on how many people's on the program, obviously, but, most of this is the one-time expense as far as like the office remodel, the office supplies, several of the things are going to be, just the one time. And I know the number for $100,000 for the actual adding for the operating budget is that leaves a little safety net too, and all that money is going to go back into the general fund most likely, because we're asking for that. There was $140,000 that included the office remodel, the probation officers, all of that, which equals about $140,000. So the $100,000 extra that I was asking for the actual program, that's to pay the invoices as for the program. So we're getting, this is just an approximate number, say we charge $10 for the offender, the monitoring service would charge around $320, and we would get the additional remaining $6.80 per person per day. So of that $10 per day that the offender's paying, it's going into our general fund, and then at the end of the month, $3.20 per day per participant is going to the monitoring service. So we have almost tripled what's going to be going back in. So that $100,000 is just there to be kind of a revolving budget, if that makes sense. It's there to pay the invoices, but only $320 of what the offender would be paying is going to be invoiced. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that sounds like a high number, but that's just to pay our invoices, but we're getting more of that revenue in. So that's just there just to pay those monthly invoices.
And then that's however many prisoners we have. If we had them in the jail, would be costing us $40
So,
or?
yeah, it would be $40 per person per per inmate, and that's the taxpayers or the county citizens that are having to fund that, basically.
So in addition to the fee, we
We're
are also.
the cost savings.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Joni, who is the collection agency for all of this?
We would funnel it through our probation office, just like we do now with our regular probation fees. So right now I have 2 office personnel, so they would handle that. I have a bookkeeper and a front office person that handles all of our fees. Since we got the probation tracking system last year, it's a very innovative system that you can set up payments through there for like weekly, monthly, one time, all that. So it keeps a really clear tracking system. So we would be able to do that, and then we would just make our regular deposits just like a regular. We would have a certain tab. Do you mind if I approach and I can show you kind of what the report is that that we can print out every day? Do you mind?
Sure.
This is like we can print this off every day, and we can create a tab for each one of these. So, like this is for this fiscal year from July 1 to October 7th, and this will show you a clear report of like how much we have collected since that date, and it will break it down. Like supervision is the regular probation fees. So a probationer, when they're sentenced to us, they are taxed a fee of $45 per month per probation or per probationer. So that's the supervision fees that we've collected from July 1 to October 7th, which is just a couple hours ago. I mean, this is like live news here. Your PTR is pre-trial release fees. That's how much we've collected. This is CS is community service. We also run community service out of our office. That's how much we've made from that date. DUI school, driving school, anything's labeled out. So we would just have another tab that said electronic monitoring program, and we could keep track of exactly how much we're making off that. To date, and you can keep that. This is from last year. You can see the total that we've collected from that, and you'll see that we are almost $25,000 ahead this fiscal year from July 1 to October 7th of this year. The exact, from last year, July 1, 2012 to October 7th, 2012, we are exactly $24,832.21 ahead of what we were at the exact same time last year. Our office is very
Let me throw.
It gives you the breakdown, side by side count, that we're ahead in everything. We increased our driving schools, the last time I came to budget, and you can see the increase in that.
Judge Brewer, this prisoner, probationer, or whatever, they're in jail now. We're talking about taking somebody out of jail, putting an ankle bracelet on them, and asking them to pay $300 a month. Whereas if they're sitting in jail right now, they're not paying anything.
Again, assuming it's what we believe to be an appropriate person to be placed on the monitor. There's some folks that are required by statute to serve a sentence, and there's some that are just, and we know them because we deal with them every day. They
Yeah.
just need to be in there. There's no other way. But there's some borderline, that could go either way, or they're not maybe not suitable for just regular probation, but they might need a little bit more attention.
Do you foresee having a problem getting the money out? I mean, if they don't pay, they're gonna go right back in the,
Mama and Papa usually come up with a poke.
okay.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I was gonna ask was about collection rates, and if you've kind of seen what other counties who have done this, what kind of collection rate they've had on this versus what we would anticipate.
I don't know the specific rate, but I know they have generated tremendous revenue. And also, we would ask that they pay a month ahead of time, or no less than 2 weeks ahead of time. So that way we shouldn't have very much of a deficit on that. And if they don't pay, then they'll
And if they don't pay, then they'll let us know that would be a violation of the terms of their probation, and then they'd be brought back to us for us to determine what to do with them.
You recall, Bill, back 15 years ago, when there was $300,000 or $400,000 uncollected dollars that were out there for driving school and everything else, they just didn't pay. I remember having this conversation with Tommy Hatcher several times. And I don't want us to get into that kind of a thing where we get a whole bunch of dollars out there and we can't find them to collect it or whatever.
I understand what you're saying. We, in that regard, as far as just collecting fines and costs and that kind of thing, just through the regular cases, we pride ourselves into making sure that, I mean, if somebody has the privilege of staying out on probation or as opposed to being in jail, we expect them to comply with the rules. And in fact, today was one of my compliance days, and I had a lot of them that didn't comply, so I invited them to the jail. Now, they may, Papaw may decide, hey.
Oh, if it does.
Yeah, I mean,
See if this helps a little bit. If you look at the labor cost just for the probation officers, if my arithmetic's correct, it amounts to $148 a day. So that's our cost. And if we have 40 probationers assigned to each probation officer, we have at $6.80 a day, that's the potential for $272 a day of revenue generation.
I believe she said 20.
20 per.
20, so it's 40 total, so 136 bucks a day. Not counting the additional revenue she can pick up from the classes that she can teach.
$12 a day.
And what we're not spending by housing them in the jail.
That's correct. It's a cost avoidance issue as much as anything else.
and that number, that 40 total, that's just, that's the cost. There could be more, could be less. Hopefully, eventually, we can get it to be more.
Will the people on community service, will you make them wear one as well?
Now, people on community service, they're basically, they've done something that's upset one of us, and then we invite them over to the animal shelter to volunteer.
And we appreciate it.
And we do appreciate that.
I know y'all get quite a bit of help.
And Chief Rafford loves them out there too.
The sentencing of the person who would be wearing a bracelet would be one that wouldn't be, their cost would be reimbursed by the state, the $37 that we receive from the state.
For somebody that's been in jail?
Right.
I don't, Jeff, that's probably something, that wouldn't occur. State's not gonna pay.
I think he's talking about state prison.
Oh, you're talking about state prison? No, we wouldn't be monitoring state.
State, okay.
And that cost to us is purely our
Our
cost
cost,
on these
yes.
prisoners.
Yeah, there's nowhere else, there's no money other than that.
Commissioner Burkhalter, what's this gonna do to the numbers in the jail? Or maybe Jeff, whichever one of you.
I think Jeff is probably more prepared to speak to that one. My concern is, and we're having a needs study to address this, is even if we pull 40 people out of the jail, from my understanding from all the hearings we've had, there's still 5,000 unserved arrest warrants. So if we pull 40 people out, we might be putting 40 more people in. But we're still getting people out of the jail, and we're being able to monitor them, so that way it does free up for those more violent offenders. Right now, and I'm not going to put words into the mouths of our judges, but right now, in my opinion, they're having to weigh, do we release a burglar or do we release somebody who's been drunk driving? We don't have the space to house them both. So they have to unfortunately do discretionary enforcement of two people are convicted of a crime. Which one do they want to let go or not serve jail time while they put the other one in because we're overcrowded? So, that's what I see as the bigger problem, is that we have an overcrowded issue. This will help, but this will not solve. Jeff, do you want to take another shot at it?
I would just tell you the population is 484 today, so
We're still over.
we're still over.
Jeff, while you're there, when you have a hearing in Nashville, do you know the timetable for that on decertification?
We had a final inspection today from TCI, got the report, which we do have to go before the Board of Controls on December the 4th at 10 a.m. in Nashville to plead our case to keep our certification due to overcrowding.
Do you think this would help the case?
Anything that we can do as a part of our partnership that the county commission has formed, then we can show measurable progress. And I believe this is something favorable that is measurable, that it will help our case. Obviously, I can't speak for the board, but anything that we can show that the commission and the sheriff's office and the mayor's office is doing to help, I believe it will.
$250,000 expenditure should help.
Like I said, it's a measurable step that I think they can see that we're taking this issue serious, so.
Randy, what's the source of the funds again?
In the proposal before you, the $240,000 worth of, let me get back up here, of expenses is offset by 100 in probation fees on the first page. If I can get back. $154,280 worth of new probation fees or revenue, and then the balance of $85,790 has to come out of fund balance. That's a worst case scenario. It'll be something less than that. Depends on the actual experiences. The judge said, we've not done this before, so we're asking you to establish a budget, and that'll give us the parameters to work within. You know what the marginal cost is and the marginal revenue, and then it's the ramp up. We're going to be in a losing situation on the cost up front because we're going to have the hiring and ramping up of the staff and getting them trained before we start earning the revenue in January. So there's at least a 2-month lag time. That's correct. That's correct. What's before you is an annual amount based on 20 probationers per probation officer per year.
Do we buy these ankle bracelets and stockpile them somewhere? Do we have or how does that work?
No, sir, they would be provided by the company. And that would go into that daily monitoring fee. If by chance that they were lost, we would have at least a 5% rebate on those, that we would get back 5% of the operating budget on those, which we would probably not lose that many. If we did, the installation fee is going to help a little bit on that from each one of the probationers on it. But it is a GPS, and we would most likely find it.
Do you require some kind of upfront deposit from the probationer?
Yes, they would be a $25 installation fee, and then their daily rate, which, like I said, we would profit the $680 per day per participant.
So the ongoing cost, annual cost is roughly $107,000 a year, $106,790 in payroll, direct payroll cost.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you plan to generate that?
Yes.
And then some. Because it certainly seems like within probably 2 to 3 years, we've more than made up for the upfront cost. And then after that period of time, that savings is just savings going forward, or money into fund balance as opposed to the initial investment coming out.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more question.
Sure.
Do you foresee a time that a probation officer could handle more than 20?
I can't say at this time because it's a brand new program, so I would definitely see 20 is a lot for one person because it is 24/7. They'll get alerts even if, they can set boundaries, and so if that person just steps out of the boundary and steps back in, they'll get an alert. So 20 definitely at the start, and I think once everyone got trained, maybe they would be able to handle more. But at the front end, I say no more than 20 to start out with. From other agencies that I've talked to, they said.
Each probation officer now is handling over 300.
Yes, but the electronic monitoring is a more intensive program. So, we're going to get alerts on them, just little battery alerts even, if their batteries are going dead.
And Judge alluded to this a little bit earlier, John, but talk about the number of, however you describe it, either probationers or cases, or I think it's over 300 per probation officer currently.
Yes.
And just as a comparison, if you look at Knox County, what kind of caseload do they handle?
They have around 100 or less than that. Most places, well, state only has, the most that they will have is 100, state probation. Knox County, I'm very sure that they have around 100. They think our numbers are astronomical, and they are. We have at least 75 people come in almost every day. That's not including our new referrals and our classes and all of that. That's just standard probationers. That's on a busy day. And that number, over 350 people, that each one of our probation officers goes to court 1 day a week as well. So they're trying to supervise that astronomical amount on a caseload and go to court 1 day a week. Then we have 2 probation officers that teach a batterer's intervention class, which takes an hour and a half every Wednesday as well. So that's another hour and a half that's knocked out of their day once a week. And then in November, we're going to add another tract of that as well. So that's a 3-hour, knocking out of their day for 2 of my officers. So they are spread very thin. Like I said, every one of them are trained defensive driving instructors, even our office personnel as well, just so that they don't get burnt out. We do about 5 driving schools a month. We do a DUI school once every other month. And we have the batterer's intervention program. We also do the community service. Our office runs a lot of different areas of this county.
That was my point. That's an awful big caseload per worker.
It is a huge caseload for them, and I've got a great staff right now, so, and they're hanging in there, but I can't put a whole lot more on them. I would have to have additional people.
Great, thank you.
So, thank you.
Any other discussion? Do we have a motion and a second? I'll ask now for a roll call vote, please.
Lewis? Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon? Yes. Samples?
Yes.
Motion passed.
F1D, General Administration Fund, $94,580 needed for an assessment. Randy?
This is coming to you for funding. The recommendation from the Corrections Partnership Committee is to enter into an agreement with the Institute for Public Law or for Law and Public Policy, or Policy Planning, ILPP, and you have, with this funding request, the proposal is that, in my recommendation, to take it out of fund balance. I don't know of anywhere else we can take it. Secondly, the work schedule is behind, as well as the scope of work is included with the budget amendment recommendation.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Any discussion? Any questions for Randy?
Whoever else is out there doing this.
The committee asked for a RFP, or a request for information, I think it was, that the purchasing department handled, and we received a number of proposals. And after shortlisting the proposals, the committee interviewed the shortlisted firms and recommended this firm be submitted to the full commission.
Are we familiar with any other studies that they've done in this area?
The nonprofit that the committee chose has done over 400 studies nationwide. They have been appointed as a special master in over 100 different jurisdictions by the federal courts. The closest one in Tennessee they've dealt with is in Knox County in 2007, and they have been in regular contact with them since then. Knox County was very happy with the services that they rendered. The short list, when it came out, just so you all know, the organization is not focused on any one solution to the jail overcrowding problem. They look at the entire criminal justice system from the start to finish, and will come back to the full commission with a list of suggestions on how to help remedy the jail overcrowding. It could be anywhere from additional employees in certain departments to new procedures. So they are going to give us a wide range of suggestions.
How long did they propose?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, my voice. How long did they propose to take to do the work?
I think their scope is 17 weeks, Randy, from the time that we award the contract to them to the time that they'll hit the ground and be completed would be 17 weeks. So we'd be looking at, when we looked at this, we wanted to be able to have a presentation given sometime either in January or February. So that way, whatever their recommendation was could be included into the next year's budget hearings, which would start approximately in February or March. So that's what we're looking at. The only thing that's going to come up is we thought this might be awarded back in September. The 17 weeks, as we've told, Mr. Kalmanov is a guide, because in that time period we have a week of Thanksgiving, a week of Christmas, and a week of New Year's. So we might be 20 weeks from start to finish, but his work scope would only be 17 weeks. And it is a fixed contract price. There is, what you see is what it is, and when purchasing and the committee went back and calculated up his line items, he actually understated what his time charge was for the amount of time it was going to take, and he held firm to the quoted price of $94,000 instead of what the actual time cost would have been. So we're quite happy with that. And he's based out of California, and his travel expenses are already included as part of the fixed price, so there won't be any additional increases for that either.
Most of the time, consultants will charge you the fee plus expenses and out of pocket.
Appreciate that one, thank you.
Any other questions for Tab?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tab. I'll ask for a motion. We got it? Okay, never mind. Then I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Lewis? Mitchell?
Yes.
Did he vote? I'm sorry. Okay. Moon, sorry. And Sample? Yes. Motion passed.
Item F1E, the library fund, $4,969. Kathy?
I think it's $5,606. I think you just read it from the bottom line. You gave permission for us a couple of months ago to apply for a technology grant through the state of Tennessee. The grant was awarded. We were awarded from the state $2,803. It requires a match, and the Friends of the Library have agreed to provide the match of $2,803. So that's why the increase is $5,606. It's for some desktop computers to go on our counters, some cabling that will connect our current scanners with the new computers, and a scanner that will read iPhones. You know, people are beginning to put their cards on iPhones, and it requires a camera scanner, not the kind of scanner we have. So it's a reduced amount from what we originally requested, but that's based on what we actually got from the grant. well, thank you. Thank you.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Lewis. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon. Sample. Motion passed.
Now we move into transfers. F2A, risk management, $109,944, operating transfer. Don's not here. Randy, you handling that? Oh. Okay.
I'll talk about it. It's one you sign.
Let me find it here. I don't, you got a copy of it?
Should be item F1F.
Okay.
Comes out of account 091200, and it's called Highway, Street, and Capital Projects in Fund 189. It is technically called the Townsend Covered, or the Kensal Springs Covered Bridge Project. This matter came to you previously, has been approved by this body and the full commission. It had to be resubmitted to the state of Tennessee Department of Transportation for grant reconsideration. In the course of all that gyration, the project cost increased, and I think most of those increases were at the request of, to meet the standards that TDOT set. To fund our portion of the match, the county's portion is $69,900 and change. We have previously approved $57,000 and change, and there is an additional, so there's an additional $12,661 needed for local match. Based on the mayor's conversation with some business leaders in Townsend, they have agreed to step up in the form of gifts and donations to make up that difference. So we would need approval from this body to increase the project, and this would be the county's portion only, and it is to be paid for from private resources. This is necessitated because the state has put a deadline of November 1 to receive all grants. It is a very competitive process, and we need action by the commission so that we can demonstrate in writing to them that it has the approval of the legislative body to be submitted with the grant request.
Any other discussion? Yep. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Lewis. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon. Sample. Motion passed.
Now we move to transfers. Risk management, $109,944.50, operating transfer. Randy, you?
In our operating budget right now, we receive about $220,000 roughly from our to fund our risk management operation from workers' comp, insurance fund, and our general liability. So there's no net cost to the taxpayers for the administration of those two insurance programs. We were advised a year ago, if you'll recall, by the comptroller's office that we needed to discontinue our prior practice of running all of our insurance programs, those being general liability, workers' comp, dental, and health, through the same fund. We were asked to discontinue that practice, separate all of those. In the course of doing that and in having our discussions with the auditors as part of our closing out process, they have made us aware that we have not made the progress that they would like to see on funding those self-insured programs of workers' comp and general liability. So the recommendation that I'm bringing to you is that we forgive the transfer from the workers' comp program to the general fund, which will short the general fund revenue by $109,000, so that we can then make provisions in next year's budget, in the 15 budget, to make that money up and whatever our actual costs are going to be on a per employee basis, and set those premiums to the departments to cover all those costs. So it creates I want everybody to understand, it creates $110,000 hole in the general fund. But at this point in time where we are, I want to demonstrate to the comptroller as part of our audit process that we recognize we have the deficiency. We're making an interim step to correct the deficiency, and the culmination of that is we come back to this body when we discuss the budget next year, and we set rates on a per employee basis that are sufficient to cover that.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Discussion?
What that liability is gonna look like 8 months from now?
No, because we actually made progress this year in both those areas. If you look at the losses that we were incurring, those have slowed down. So actually the fund balance has improved for both of those pieces of business, being general liability and workers' comp. So we actually improved. But in workers' comp, we're not in a positive fund balance situation. And just so the public understands, I mean, I've included that analysis on that update that I attached to this. As of June 30 this year, workers' comp was showing a deficit of $213,800 roughly, and general liability was showing a surplus of $314,000. And there was a turnaround of. There was an improvement on general liability from a deficit of $138,000 a year ago to a positive $314,000. And on workers' comp, it improved from a $368,000 deficit to a $213,000 deficit. So we're making progress, but we can't really predict what our liability exposure is. Those are functions of lawsuits and how those get adjudicated or settled. So the good news is we've made progress. The bad news is it didn't come as fast as we'd like it or as significantly as we would like it. And even if you approve this, this does not mean we would not receive an audit finding. I don't want to make any commitment there. This is my attempt to demonstrate to the auditors that we're trying to make progress in a good faith effort. The other good news is if you looked at health insurance, workers' comp, and general liability in 2012, we had combined fund balances of $5.1 million. If you looked at that at June 30, 2013, our combined fund balances were $5.8 million, so a $700,000 improvement. And if you were thinking about asking this question, I'll go ahead and answer it. We cannot take any reserves from any other fund and transfer those to any of the other funds. No. If we had a different form of government, you might be able to do that, but we don't.
Ask for roll call vote.
Lewis. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon. Samples. Motion passed.
Item F2B, Veteran Services, $5,969 salary and benefits. Randy, you going to discuss that?
We're requesting that you transfer some money from account 51,310 to account 58,300 in the amount of $5,969 on compensation and related employment costs for our veterans leadership.
Have a motion?
I think everybody's aware of the recent recognition that that office has received.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Lewis. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon. Sample. Motion passed.
Item G, discussion of possible action on grant applications on records management. Jackie?
I'm asking to apply for the grant that I applied for last year. We got a notice that we didn't receive funding, and I plan to apply for the same grant. The due date is December 3rd. And they had 97 applicants, and they average about 18 grants per year. They may be cutting some of their funding this year. It's still, as far as I know, they've not yet, but it may happen. The only match that I'm asking for is in-kind money that is existing in my budget that would be labor related, that we could present as an in-kind match to their $99,900. I think it's something like 38,000, 37, something like that.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? Discussion?
Undesignated at this time?
They're in the existing budget. It would be labor to move, and I've had to do a breakdown of the labor projections, and it would be my budget, and I've talked with it would be some labor from the highway department to help me move. And I just used a low amount of minimum wage on that salary.
Any more discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Lewis. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon. Samples. Motion passed.
Thank you, Jackie. Item 2 is information only.
Let me just give a few editorial comments there. There's been a great deal of discussion over the last couple months about the grant procedures and how some of this stuff gets to the commission with due dates or filing dates that predate your all's approval. We have included in your packet under item G2 some suggested revisions to our grant procedures process. We've highlighted those. We are not asking for your approval tonight. We're giving them to you a month in advance for you to look at, and then we'll bring it back to you next month and ask you to consider something. If you have suggested improvements to this, please get them to me or Ashley. And then the next item, G2B, we also have it on here to be considered for November, but if you want to approve it tonight, I don't have a problem with that. Little background, we receive requests from time to time to donate money to the Animal Center, to Blount County, not a foundation. And what donors are interested in is when they give that gift, they want to be able to guarantee or be assured that the money by which they give it for, the purpose they give it for, is actually honored. So with the resolution that's before you, if you approve it, it allows us then, once we receive that money, we can restrict it on our fund balance and then use it for those non-recurring costs that are all capital related. And the other reason is Charlie would like to be here. If you had any questions, he'd be willing to give you answers or any responses that you may have that I might not be able to give you.
And I would add that the entire animal committee signed on this month.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we send this on to the commission, to the agenda committee tomorrow night.
Second.
So we've got a motion and a second. You want to do a voice vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Does that take care of that, Randy?
That's all I've got.
I'll now ask if there's any input on items not on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Move adjourn.
Second.
So be it.
Steve moved, Jerome seconded to adjourn.